Do you know that feeling when you finish spending time with someone and you feel more tired than when you started? Not the good kind of tired, not the kind that comes from a long day of doing something that mattered. The specific kind of tired that comes from giving and giving and giving and realizing somewhere in the middle of it that nothing is coming back. You left the conversation feeling hollow, like something was taken from you that you did not agree to give. You care about this person. That is the complicated part. If you did not care about them, it would be easy. You would just walk away. But you do care, and so you keep showing up. You keep giving. You keep answering the calls at bad times and dropping your own things and carrying their weight on top of yours. And slowly, so slowly you almost do not notice, you start to feel it. The heaviness before you see them. The relief when plans get canceled. The way you have to mentally prepare yourself before a conversation that used to come naturally. That is not a friendship. That is an anchor dressed up as a person. Today, Captain Borehead is going to talk about this, because this is one of the most common things that exhausts people in their 20s, and almost nobody talks about it honestly. There was a man who sailed with us for 8 months. His name was Fletcher. Fletcher was not a bad person. I want to be very clear about that from the beginning, because this lesson is not about bad people. Bad people are easy. You see a bad person and your instincts know what to do. Fletcher was not bad. Fletcher was something more complicated than bad. Fletcher was charming. He was funny in the way that makes a whole room turn toward you. He was the kind of person who could walk onto a ship full of strangers and within 2 hours feel like he had been there for years. When you first met Fletcher, you thought, this person is exactly the kind of crew member I want. Good energy, easy company, the kind of person who makes hard days feel lighter. And for the first few weeks, that was true. But then a pattern started to emerge, a slow one, the kind you do not see clearly until you look back at it from a distance. Every problem on the ship somehow became a conversation with Fletcher. Not just problems that involved him, every problem. Someone else's conflict, Fletcher would appear and make it about his feelings. A decision that needed to be made, Fletcher would have a long and detailed opinion that always ended with him needing reassurance. Something would go well on the ship, a good day, a good catch, a successful crossing, and Fletcher would find the thing in it that was not quite right and hold it up until the good feeling drained away. He never asked for much at once. That is the important thing to understand about people like Fletcher. They never ask for so much that you feel able to say, that is too much. They ask for small things, consistently, in a direction that always goes one way, toward them, away from you. And after 8 months of it, I looked around my crew and realized something. The best people on the ship were tired. The people who gave the most were the ones giving to Fletcher, and Fletcher was exactly the same as the day he arrived. Here's the thing about this kind of person that makes them so difficult to deal with. They are not doing it on purpose, at least not consciously. Fletcher was not waking up every morning with a plan to drain the people around him. He was simply operating from a place of deep need that he had never examined and never taken responsibility for. He needed constant reassurance because somewhere along the way he had decided that reassurance was something other people owed him. He needed his problems to be the center of attention because he had never learned to sit with discomfort privately. He needed the energy of others because he had never built his own. And the people around him, good people, caring people, kept filling that need because caring people do that, because when someone you care about seems to be struggling, you want to help. It is a good instinct. It is also an instinct that certain people will consume without limit if you let them. The other thing that makes this so hard is the guilt. The moment you start to feel tired, the moment you notice the weight, the voice in your head starts immediately. You tell yourself that a good friend would not feel this way, that you are being selfish, that they need you and pulling back would be cruel, that you should be able to handle this because it's just talking, just listening, just being there. But here's what that voice is missing. You cannot pour from an empty cup. That is not a saying, that is a mechanical fact. You have a finite amount of energy. Every hour you spend managing someone else's emotional needs is an hour you are not spending on your own work, your own rest, your own relationships with people who give back. And when you are consistently running on empty, when you are chronically tired from giving to someone who does not give back, you don't just become less useful to them, you become less useful to everyone, including yourself. Protecting your energy is not selfishness, it is maintenance. It is the thing that allows you to show up for the people and the work that actually matter to you. I did not handle this well at first. I want to be honest about that. My first instinct was to avoid the problem, to be slightly less available without saying anything directly, to be busy when Fletcher came looking for a conversation, to answer his questions with shorter answers and hope he got the message without me having to deliver it. He did not get the message. People like Fletcher rarely get indirect messages because they are too focused on their own need to read the signals you are sending. Indirect withdrawal does not work with a direct need. I was spending energy managing the avoidance on top of still being partially available. I was getting the worst of both options. So I did something that felt uncomfortable and that I am now completely convinced is the only thing that actually works. I was honest with him. Not cruel, not with a list of grievances and a door slamming behind me. I sat down with Fletcher in a moment that was calm, not after a conflict, not in the middle of a hard day, but in a quiet moment when nothing was wrong, and I told him something true. I told him that I had noticed a pattern, that our conversations had started to feel one-directional, that I cared about him, and that because I cared about him, I wanted to say this directly, rather than pull away without explanation. And I told him clearly that I could not keep showing up the way I had been showing up, not because I didn't value him, but because the way things were going was not working for me. That conversation was uncomfortable. Fletcher did not immediately say, "Thank you, what useful feedback." He was hurt. He pushed back. He said things that were designed to make me feel guilty. And I sat with all of that without changing what I had said, because what I had said was true, and kindness sometimes requires you to hold a true thing, even if the other person doesn't want to hear it. After that conversation, something shifted. Not immediately, not perfectly, but Fletcher started, slowly, with difficulty, to take up slightly less space, because someone had finally told him where the line was. Not because he was a bad person who needed punishing, but because he was a person who had never had anyone honest enough to show him where the line was. Some people, when you set a limit, will respect it. Some will not. Fletcher was somewhere in the middle, but here's what I know for certain. The conversation changed something, and the avoidance never would have. I want to make a distinction here that I think is important. There is a difference between a friend going through a hard season and a friend who is permanently in a hard season that only exists when you are available to witness it. Everyone goes through hard seasons, real ones, grief, loss, failure, illness, fear. If your friend is going through something real and heavy, and they need you more than usual for a period of time, that is not what I am talking about. That is friendship. That is what the relationship is for. You give more during those times, and you do it willingly, and it costs you something, and it's worth it. But what I am talking about is something different. What I am talking about is the pattern that has no end, the crisis that never resolves because a new one always arrives, the need that never gets smaller no matter how much you give to it, the relationship where your good news somehow always gets redirected back to their problems, the friendship where you consistently leave feeling worse than when you arrived. That pattern is not a hard season. That pattern is a dynamic. And dynamics don't change on their own. They only change when someone names them. You can love someone and still not have unlimited access.